Welcome to the Demystifying the Electric Vehicle Experience webinar. So this webinar is designed to help you make the transition to a plug-in electric vehicle or a full battery electric vehicle. It's brought to you by several organizations, including the Haverford Township Environmental Advisory Committee. My name is Peter Puglionesi with the Environmental Advisory Committee, and our main presenter tonight is Noel Smith. And we also have a couple of panelists who we'll introduce later. Noel Smith, would you take it away?
I would, yeah. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, folks, for joining. This is a great topic to talk about. I've been an EV driver since 2014, so I have a little bit of experience on this, and I can just say as a testament that I will never buy a gasoline vehicle again. And that's not based on even the environmental impacts, which were the reason I went to do it. It was the electric car driving experience is just superior, and from the quiet ride to the instant torque, to the I don't go to a gas station anymore and get smelly chemicals on my hands and clothes. So it's just an amazing experience, and it's going to be truly revolutionary when the price parity hits, which I think we're just about there right now. And there's some exciting developments coming in the near future too to bring that price down even more. But I've got solar in my home. I drive an electric car, and I also volunteer my time at the Citizens Climate Lobby, and I work on putting a price on carbon so that we don't get to continue to pollute our children's future for free. So that's a little bit about me and why I'm here to talk to you tonight. So let's go. Yeah. So my first question was, yeah, I always forget to ask before I flip the slide, but the question is, what was first, the gasoline car or the electric car? And of course, the answers in front of us, right there tonight is that in the actual first car that was built and manufactured was an electric carriage in 1832. It was the Fritschel Electric, and you can see the advertisement for it there. But it had limited range, so it was for bopping around town, local driving. But it was easy to start. You could just pop in and press go. Easy to drive. There wasn't any mechanical gear shifting to do. And then in 1910, the Model T came about, as most people know and think that as the first production car, but it was the first production gasoline car, mass-produced gasoline car that was as mass-produced, and it was harder to start. They had to crank it, and I remember as a child when I'm not that old, but when I went to Ireland to visit relatives when I was a child, they still had cars that started with a crank, and it was an interesting experience for an 8-year-old to see people crank cars to start them, but really did. That's the way they were back then. Difficult to change gears. You needed some strength, and there was some grinding as you did it, and there was limited access to gasoline. So, when they first came out, they weren't really kind of taken over for beating that electric carriage, but then things changed. Access improved to the fuel, the roads improved, and then this car could go faster and travel longer distance because of the convenience of just pouring some very potent chemicals into the tank to keep going. So that's what started the internal combustion engine's dominance over the next 110 years. So let's go to the next slide, Peter. There's a really strong driver for folks that care about clean air and global warming to go to EVs. You can see on the left chart there, it talks about the greenhouse gas emissions in 2018, and transportation is accountable for 28% of the total U.S. greenhouse gas emissions in that year, and that's pretty consistent year to year. And then if you go to the right chart, you see that of that 28%, 61% of that's light duty vehicles. It's the car that we go ahead and drive to work in, and so the opportunity is to move the needle. When I say move the needle, it's like to really make a difference on reducing the impact to the environment that we're from the transportation sector, we can really move the needle by going to an electric car. So let's talk about what types there are. The first one is a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, and there's a couple others described to kind of give you a picture of what that is. But these are vehicles that run on gasoline, but they also run on electricity. You can plug them in, and one really popular one is the Prius. The Prius has been a really fuel-efficient vehicle for many years, but I guess probably 6 or 8 years ago, they came out with a plug-in version of that, and I think they're getting up to pretty decent range where if you do plug in your Prius today or your plug-in Prius, you could probably do most of your local driving on electric, and then you have the ability to run on gas for when you're doing your long trips, and so you kind of have the best of both worlds. You got a little bit of environmental benefit by all of your local driving, and then of course you don't have to worry about the charging infrastructure or what have you for long. Chevy Volt was one of those as well, but I think the Volt is probably retired at this point and making less of those. And these are like transition vehicles, transition vehicles that are moving towards full electric. So like I said, you can go long range, can do most of your around town driving, and but still it is a more complex, and eventually this will be a more expensive car than an electric car, just because of the complexity. You'll have both a gasoline engine and an electric motor to drive this vehicle, and of course it burns gasoline. So then there's the all-electric vehicles, or the battery electric vehicles, or just EVs, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We list a few of them here. The Bolt is one of the longer range ones. Tesla, all the Tesla models, of course, are fully electric. The whole company was built on the premise that electric vehicles are superior. And then the Nissan Leaf, which was probably one of the first, if not the first, out in the market of the current vehicles that are out today, discounting the EV one that was put out years ago. But these are all vehicles that have really superior performance. The range will do your day-to-day driving without compromise. So when I say without compromise, is for the typical American commuter driving to work and coming home at night, not going city to city, these EVs, and it's not just these three, there's really a longer list that's out today that are over 200 miles range on a full charge. They really will do all of your commutes, because you come home every night, and guess what you have at home? You have a plug, and you plug it in and leave every day. So the one thing is you do have to plan for longer trips. Some vehicles have more capability than others for that, so it depends on what your needs are and what you want to do with your vehicle. If you have two cars, a gas and an electric, you can drive one for most of your around town stuff, and the gasoline one for your longer trip. Or if if there are cars like the Tesla family of cars are built for city to city travel as well. So it does depend on what you want to spend and what you want to do out of it. Unexpected trips are you do need it with an EV. You typically need to plan, and I've lived through this. I've had mine since 2014, long before the infrastructure of the I guess the plug-in infrastructure was where it is today. And I had to think about longer trips and plan for them. And the last point is, and this is real consideration, in cold weather the range does decrease substantially, and I'd say 15 to 20% less range that you'll get out of your vehicle, because the battery needs to operate at a certain temperature, and some of the energy that is stored in the battery needs to be used to heat the battery itself, and so your range will be reduced. So it's not a big deal. You just need to know it and plan for it, that the range is different for at least in our environment here where we are. We have cold winters, warm summers. Summers are the range is as advertised. In winter, you can easily take 15% off of that to expect what your range is going to be. So the pros and cons to each. The pros, I mentioned earlier, instant torque, and until you drive an electric car and experience instant torque, it's hard to really appreciate what that means. And it is a nice feeling. It's just like a go-kart almost, but it's a car, And when you push go, it just goes. There's no hesitation. Where in an internal combustion engine, there's this delay where, you know, you push the accelerator and the vehicle hesitates for a moment and then starts to go. There's no hesitation. Anyway, it's kind of a nice feature. It's quiet. Some people like the noise. I actually have become pretty happy with a quiet motor and just listening to the radio. I don't miss the noise of the internal combustion engine. Some do, but I find it awesome to have a quiet vehicle. There is lower operating costs for the vehicle, for an electric vehicle, and we have a slide on that in a minute, and I'll kind of drive through that, but it's real. And no fuel time for daily driving. So I don't know about you, but I do most of my driving around town, and I never have to stop. I never have to think about, oh, I got to go to the gas station. Oh, I got to go fill up. I never have to think about it ever on my daily driving because I just plug in when I'm at home. It's like, do you think about charging your cell phone? No, well, you just do it. So it's the same kind of concept that you come home at night, you plug in your car, and every day you leave with a full vehicle, and you just really don't have to think about it. There are some subsidies out there today for that, and some perks as far as parking, and some places like I guess some of the retail establishments will let you actually plug in for free and get some free fuel, free electricity while you're there as well. And then again, I'll go back to the reason I did this, and the reason I was such an early adopter on an unproven technology is we really need this to work. We have to shift the entire transportation sector to electricity, because that allows us to then work on changing the electricity sector to renewables, and then we are truly driving on sunshine. There are some cons. The first one is higher initial cost, and that con is quickly going away. In fact, you could likely get an EV today that would have a lower total cost of ownership from cradle to grave than buying a gasoline car. So there's that. There's longer fuel time on long trips. When I say trips, that's not your daily driving. This is where you're going from city to city, and you need to stop to refuel on the way. You can't get there with a full charge. So you're talking, you know, I'll just describe a few of the trips I've been on. I've driven my car to Maine. I've driven it to Chicago. I've driven to DC, New York, numerous times, in Pittsburgh, and yeah, I need to fuel up on those. But again, if you get a vehicle that is on the Tesla network, which it would be a Tesla at this point, there's a fairly fast charging network, and it's not that inconvenient. It does take a little longer, but that can be refreshing as well. You stop at a rest stop, you plug in, you know, take 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and you're back in the vehicle going. The charging infrastructure was a con. I think at this point that's maturing, and we're going to talk about that in a minute too. When I first got my EV, it was definitely a con, and I have some unique tools in my toolkit to account for that I haven't used in years, because the charging infrastructure is largely there now. The model selection, again, was a con. I think we're moving to where most manufacturers are coming out with pretty compelling selection for electric cars that you can choose from. So you're not just limited to one or two models. And then, you know, I mentioned range limitations for inner city travel. That's city to city travel. You know, that is a concern. And again, it depends on which vehicle you buy. There's one vehicle manufacturer that's built their own charging network that is superior to the others, and we'll talk about that in a minute that's Tesla, but we'll talk about that when we get to that slide as well. So yeah, so the cons are quickly going away. So next slide. So we talk about myths. One of the myths is that plug-in vehicles can only support short trips, not daily commutes. And the fact is that most EVs available today come with a greater than 200-mile range versus most commutes are under 40 miles. And just think about that, like every single day when you leave the house, you've got full range on your vehicle because you just plug in when you go home. In fact, the Tesla models, they're over 300. In fact, I think the newest Model S is pushing 400-mile range, and yep, so they're really pushing it up there. And of course, plug-in hybrids, you can go even further. So that is a myth that, you know, the vehicles can't support your daily driving. They can. There's a myth that the electric vehicle will make your energy bill go way up. Well, I'll tell you, it will make your electricity bill go up, absolutely. But think about what you pay for gasoline, and then just put that in the bank. And one of the operating cost is kind of how you have to look at it. The operating cost of an electric car is 2 to 3 cents a mile for electricity. For a comparable internal combustion engine or gasoline car, that's 12 to 14 cents, and that's for like a mid-size, you know, like an Accord, like a fairly efficient car. I used to drive an Accord. It cost me 14 cents a mile on gasoline. My Tesla is 2 to 3. If I drive my wife's car, she's got the Model 3. It's 2 cents. My Model S is probably 3 cents a mile for gasoline. So it is fairly compelling, and it's cheaper. Your energy costs actually go down substantially. So there's another myth that plug-in vehicles aren't clean. They run off the dirty power plants. Well, there's a couple things on that one I want to talk about, and one is you actually have an option as a consumer as to how you source your power from the utility. You can purchase clean power today, and it's pretty price competitive. You can get solar panels in your house if you really want to save money, and there's a whole nother webinar that we have on that. But again, I drive my car and I plug in at my home, which is powered by solar. And one of the neat things is I can say I drive on sunshine, and that's true. But the other thing is, even in our region, even if you just went straight from the grid, a very large percentage of our grid energy in this region is nuclear, and nuclear doesn't have any kind of carbon emissions in the atmosphere. As you know, I know there's other environmental impacts, but from a global warming perspective, it's a fairly clean choice. So, and I'll also just say, no matter what grid you're on in the United States, the grids are getting greener every year. The price of renewables is becoming more and more competitive, and the grids are getting greener. And but no matter what grid you're in, it is more environmentally friendly to drive an electric vehicle running off the grid than it is to put fossil fuels in the vehicle. And then the last one on here is that the electric vehicles are far more expensive than the average car, and we really look at it from a life cycle perspective. So, you know, going in and buying a vehicle, an electric car, it might cost a little bit more when you're purchasing it, but your operating costs are substantially lower, such that as you consider the life cycle costs over the time that you're going to own that car and all of the costs associated with buying and running and maintaining that vehicle, you'll find that there are electric vehicles out today that have a lower total cost of ownership to buy, to run and maintain than gasoline cars. And there's still some pretty compelling incentives at the federal and state level for buying electric vehicles. And then of course you can say, you know, and really follow, you know, what you want to do around your making a difference to the environment, and that's important too. So I talked about some of the things that I love about the electric car. I'm going to kind of talk about them here. That picture is of a car that's coming out in a couple of years. It's the Tesla Roadster, replacing the current Roadster, and this car is going to be the fastest production car ever made, and it's going to be faster than any supercar on the road, just from a you know, just a power performance issue. But when we talk about performance, right, the instant torque component I mentioned earlier, again, once you've driven an electric car, you won't want to go back because of that instant torque and instant feedback. The acceleration, you have that instant torque at all speeds, and I was amazed when I was driving my electric car, you know, kind of in the first couple months of it, and I'd be on the highway and I'm driving 50 or 60 miles an hour. I needed to pass somebody, and I saw a spot open up a little bit, and you still have all that torque even at that speed. It's just available to you, and the acceleration is just it's impressive. There's no gear changing. It's got one gear, and it just goes. So that makes for a very smooth and quiet ride. And then the weight distribution, because of the way the battery sits, at least in the Teslas and some of the others, it's the battery sits at the bottom of the vehicle underneath. You've got an almost identical weight distribution to each of the wheels, which gives you a really stable ride and a low center of gravity that goes along with it. And then the last slide, or the last bullet there, is supposed to say it's faster than most ICE vehicles. Electronic controls, again, we're used to that. It's kind of like how we've kind of adapted to the digital environment. My cars are, honestly, they are kind of iPads on wheels. I get software updates over the air. In fact, my Model S is getting a software update tonight at 2:20 in the morning, because that's the time I told it to do it. Regenerative braking is neat. So, and I'm going to talk about that in the maintenance one. I've got well over 100,000 miles on my my Model S, and you have the original brakes, because I barely use them. And as you learn how to stop without using your brakes with the regenerative braking, you just get used to it. So and it saves on the wear and tear on your brakes, and also it adds energy to the battery, makes you more efficient. They are generally heavier because of the battery component. So I would say they're probably 10 to 15% heavier than a comparable gasoline vehicle because of that. So fuel economy. This is a great slide. I love this one. So on the left we show a vehicle that gets. Oh, I'm sorry. On the right, I want to talk about this is the gasoline vehicle. So we're comparing it to a Camry at this point, I think. And this vehicle gets really competitive, 26 miles per gallon, and your annual fuel cost is, expected to be $2,150. And with the electric vehicle on the left, with a MPGE, that's the miles per gallon equivalent of that vehicle of 116 versus 26, your annual fuel cost is only $500. So this is just a comparison of the fuel efficiency of one vehicle versus another, and you can see the savings in 5 years in fuel is $9,000 for the electric car versus almost $2,000 for that a fairly efficient gasoline vehicle on the left. And the key thing I want you to take from this is the efficiency of the vehicles, and they put it in a language that everyone can understand in the what's called the MPGE. That's the the equivalent energy. So they take a gallon of gasoline and determine how many joules of energy are in that, and then they say, well, how many joules of electricity does it take, or energy does it take to move the electric vehicle? And then that kind of gives a comparison. So you can just see how much waste is just inherently in the ICE vehicle, and the waste is all of that heat energy. If you ever touch the hood of an ICE or an internal combustion engine, a gasoline car, the hood is very warm. In fact, it's hot. If you ever touch the hood of a electric vehicle, it's as hot as the sun that's hitting it. In fact, I've driven to work in where it snowed overnight, and I got into work, and my entire hood was still had all the snow on it because it didn't melt, because electric vehicles don't have an engine in the front. So anyway, long story is that the fuel economy is a great advantage for the EV over the internal combustion engine. Next slide. So we talked about maintenance, and I do want to go through line by line. So it's important to understand that there are differences in maintenance for them. So we picked out a Leaf and a Camry to just compare, and of course they both use tires, and we'd say that's about an equal, right? So cars need tires, they wear them out. Oil change, the Leaf needs none ever, and the Camry needs them periodically. I guess I don't know what the I haven't bought a gasoline car in so long. I used to change mine every 3,000 to 5,000 miles. I was putting an oil change in that vehicle. You don't ever have to do it in an electric car. The transmission fluid, well, the Leaf doesn't have a transmission, so no maintenance there. The Camry, you have to maintain that. The coolant, the Leaf actually has a coolant maintenance at 125,000 miles, where the Camry, you would have done it your 4th time by then. So spark plugs and wires, non-existent in the Leaf. Yep, Camry's got to do those. Brakes, I talked about that. I put half as much, and I think I'm being generous, honestly, but it depends on how you drive. You can still drive really hard on a car and push the brakes, but if you learn how to use regenerative braking, it might be a quarter as much as as a typical gasoline car. Timing belt, yep, there's no timing belt in an electric car. Camry would have to do that. And then the window washer fluid, when it runs out, you do have to replace it in both the vehicles, wiper blades, and of course cabin filters. So the point here is that there's a lot of maintenance that a gasoline vehicle, every gasoline vehicle, we use the Camry for an example here, but every, not to pick on Camry, but every gasoline vehicle is going to need this maintenance, and it's not cheap. And on the, I've driven again for 6 years on an EV, and there really is no maintenance. In fact, the newer Tesla Model 3s come out with no maintenance schedule at all, zero. The car will just tell you if it needs anything. So pretty cool. Charging is a big consideration. You do need to have the capability to charge the vehicle to meet the needs of your driving. There's three I'm going to talk about here. There's the level 1, the level 2, and the fast charge, right? The level 1 is your standard outlet at home, and this is not going to add a lot of range in the time you have, and 2 to 5 miles is accurate. I typically get 4 to 5 miles an hour if I plug into a standard 120 volt outlet in a home. But for some people that works. If they don't drive a lot, they just plug in, and the car's plugged in for 18 hours a day, and it's charged more than adequate if you plug it in every day. But typically, if you're going to own an electric car, you're going to install a level 2 charger in your house. It's a 240 volt service. It's kind of like having a stove or whatever. So it's like a stove or an electric dryer appliance type of hookup at your home, where you would get a little bit more charging. And it says here 10 to 20, but I know in my car I get 29 miles per hour on my Model S, and my wife's Model 3 gets 35 miles per hour added on our circuit, our 240 volt circuit. So it can and that's totally fine. It's if you can imagine, I drive 20-30 miles a day, and that can be replenished in an hour, right? So people ask, well, wow, it takes 6 hours to fully charge a car, but you're like, yeah, but I plug it in every day, so what? It takes me an hour. And then there's the DC fast charge. You will not install this in your house. There's no need to. This is for it could be in a commercial setup. It could be on the highways. The Turnpike has these at some of the rest stops. There's some at the Sheetz and Wawas and those types of things. The Tesla network is considered a fast charge, and it says here that it can do up to 100 miles in 10 minutes, and there are actually ones that can go quite a bit faster than that on the Tesla network as well when you get to that. And so these are the levels. Again, if you're going to have a full battery electric vehicle, you're probably going to want to invest in a level 2 for your home, just to make sure that you can get the vehicle to the level you need it on a daily basis. So this is just a little chart about how far Americans typically drive, and here we show the range of the Chevy Volt is handling over 80% of folks' daily commute. And then the over on the right, you got the Nissan Leaf, and that's again, this is a little bit dated. That's the first generation Leaf, the very first one that came out that was under 100 miles of range. Even that, and that was like 6-7 years ago, that did over 91% of an American's typical driving need. And again, today, most EVs, if you're buying a fully electric vehicle, they're going to have an over 200 mile range on a charge, and basically does pretty much everybody's commute. So we've conquered this. We are now in the range of an EV that you bought today would be able to do all of your daily driving for daily commute. And then how long do we park? Well, guess what? We park a lot. We park a lot more than we drive. And again, this one shows kind of the approximate miles using a level 2 charging, but we typically park at work. You can see the majority of people 80% park at work for 6 or 6 hours, and 6 or more hours. So if you have charging at your workplace, again, another opportunity. I used to at my last job when I worked in Delaware. I got the opportunity to plug in my car at work every day, which was kind of a nice perk. And I left work every day filled, and I didn't have to charge at home except on the weekends. So yeah, that was kind of cool. But the point of this is our cars spend most of their life parked. And if we have charging at home, and then if you work where you have charging, you're never without a place to fill your vehicle and move. So it's totally doable. Let's go to the next slide. And this is just a nice chart of where people are typically going to charge their vehicles, and the large majority is at home. You can see that on the bottom, and then at work, and then fleet levels, and then there's public, and then intercity. So that's kind of the matrix, and that largely reflects the infrastructure that's out there today for electric vehicles. So most charging at home, most owners will charge their vehicles at home. You can use the level 1 or level 2. As I noted, level 1 you already have. That's plugging in to any of your outlets at home. Level 2 charger, you have to buy the charger, and the biggest cost might actually be the wiring, depending on how far from your circuit breaker it is. But you can figure anywhere from $500 to $2,000 to have and a licensed electrician install that in your home. Personally, I did it myself, and it cost me quite a bit less than that. But it's certainly not crazy. Again, it goes with the overall cost of the vehicle, but there is a cost to having a level 2 charger in your home to do that. And I would recommend that if you want to get full use out of your vehicle. So the setup for the home charging, again, is this 230 volt outlet. If you may need a heavy extension cord. Again, it has to be heavy duty. The cars today are pretty intelligent. They will actually be able to tell if there's a extension cord plugged in that it needs to ramp down the amperage to make sure it doesn't overheat it. I know my Tesla does that. It's very intelligent. It wasn't always, but it is now. Yeah, there's other kind of vendors out there that sell. These are the standard kind of connections for non-Tesla vehicles. There's a number of different charging stations that you can buy. They're listed here: Juicebox, Clipper, Creek, ChargePoint, and Siemens, and there's others as well. Also, you can, as you do buy the electric vehicle, you should talk to the vehicle manufacturer about their recommendation for at-home charging device as well. Yeah, some great advice on this one. So before you buy a charger, right, you want to make sure that you understand your parking situation so that the cord that you buy reaches the plug on your car. I'll give you my example. I now have, I live in Havertown, and I don't have a garage that would ever fit a vehicle. I know my house was built in the 1940s when cars were way bigger than they are now, but I'm not sure how they ever got a car in it. But it's a small garage, and so my 2 cars are parked in a driveway that fits basically 2 cars, and so they're one behind the other, and my cord has to fit or be long enough to reach the second car, the one away from the house, and it does. So there are devices that do that, and it's outside and it's fine. So anyway, the point is, figure out how your household's going to be and where the cars are going to be, and make sure that when you purchase your charging device that it meets your needs. And like I said, the one, mine's built to be outside, and it works fine out there. Again, I would recommend talking to your, the vehicle manufacturer or wherever you're buying it from, and to get their recommendation on that as well. So I talked about long range driving in Teslas, and this is a map that shows a portion of the United States. I tried to kind of show our area, and it's amazing. You can hardly see Philadelphia in there. You can kind of see maybe a portion of a couple of letters because there are so many chargers there now. It's crazy. They're probably, and every one of those red dots is what's called a supercharger. And they're the devices that I mentioned. If you got a Tesla Model 3 today and you wanted to drive anywhere in the United States of America, you'd be hard pressed to be more than 50 miles from a supercharger at any time. And now, mind you, your car's got a 300 plus range, and these superchargers charge at the Tesla ones. I've seen them as high as 500 miles an hour because they've got kind of the next gen technology in these newer vehicles. And so, like I said, if you're stopping and you're going to the restroom, by the time you do that and come back out, you've added to 150 miles of range, and you're good to the next rest stop. And it's really not taking that much more time, if any at all. But you can see the I-95 corridor just has a plethora of chargers. The red ones here are superchargers, and the gray or smaller ones are what's called destination chargers. So those are like hotels and places that you would stay longer that have free charging for Tesla owners to stay at if you're staying at that hotel, and it's a little bit of an incentive to stay at certain hotels that have these devices there for you to get a free charge while you sleep overnight. So the infrastructure has come a long way. This is the an app that's called PlugShare. I have this app on my phone. It's on my laptop, and this also shows. This is now the public charging network for all electric vehicles, not Tesla. But again, you can see that the I-95 corridor is just has a plethora of them. The orange ones are the high powered, or the DC high powered chargers that we talked about, and the green ones are the level 2 public charging stations that are there as well. So there are a lot of chargers that are available. Again, this is when you're going outside of your daily commute, and if you're going down the shore, or you're going down to DC or New York, there are options to make sure that you get home. So I have the PlugShare app on my phone, and I used to use it a lot. I don't anymore because I have a Tesla, and the Tesla network is so it's so built out now that I don't have to use the other charging network. But for any other electric vehicle, I definitely recommend the PlugShare app, as it keeps you in tune with where all of the chargers are available, when they're online, how much they cost, if they cost something. Some are free, some are not. But the PlugShare app will tell you all of that. Next slide. So we talked about the cost of ownership and price parity. When you consider a 5-year ownership of a vehicle, again, just using that as an example, and the car that has a 200-mile range, we've actually reached price parity, meaning right now there are vehicles that you can buy, electric vehicles, that the 5-year cost to own that vehicle would cost less than a comparable gasoline vehicle, and it's only getting better. You can see that electric cars are technology. I call them iPads on wheels, but in the technology environment that we're in, technology is getting cheaper over time, and generally gasoline vehicles are not. It's a pretty flat cost paradigm for ICE vehicles, where electric vehicles continue to get more cost competitive, and it's not going to make sense to buy a gasoline vehicle much longer. So here's a nice chart of a comparison of the lifetime cost of an ICE vehicle versus a electric vehicle in 2016. You can see that the ICE vehicle was about $27,000 versus a comparable electric vehicle at $24,800, and then by 2020, that difference has gotten even more, where the ICE vehicle has increased slightly for the same vehicle, and the comparable EV, the total cost of ownership has gone down as well. So again, this does include incentives that are in place, and the idea is that those incentives will go away over time because the price of those vehicles are becoming more cost competitive. That was always considered a transitionary need to get them established in the market. Now they are, and with mass production, the price of them are coming down to where you can no longer make the argument that it costs more to drive electric. It costs less. So if you are buying on cost, hybrids are rated the lowest cost of ownership for many years of running. The Kelley Blue Book in 2019 lists the 5-year cost to own on the best hybrid car was the winner at $32,000. The best midsize car was $34,000. The best electric was $35,000. And so you can see if you get a midsize electric vehicle, it is pretty comparable right now with the midsize gasoline vehicle, and the hybrids, of course, are still the best. But the electric vehicle price is still coming down and will beat even the hybrid one over the next couple of years. So more good news coming in the near future on that. Next slide. So this slide is more if you again you look at what are the best or lowest cost of ownership, and again 5-year ownership. It talks about these kind of hybrid vehicles that are shown here: the Prius, the Leaf, the Hyundai, and the Honda Accord are listed as some of the most price competitive or lowest 5-year cost of ownership for their I guess type of car. So there's still some tax credits that are available. The federal tax credit is at $7,500 for vehicles that have not yet built 200,000, and then it ramps down to $3,750, and then it eventually goes to zero for that vehicle. Again, it's meant to help establish that vehicle in the marketplace. Yeah, it's less for plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. Again, it's based on battery size. PA also has an incentive as well. You can see it's variable depending on the type of vehicle, but it's generally I think yeah, anywhere from $500 to $1,000 depending on different components, and there are some grants for charging as well. So hybrids, if you do nothing else, the 5-year fuel payback plus the lower maintenance is really compelling. So if you are in the market, there are some really awesome hybrids that are out there to help bring the cost of owning your vehicle down, and also again the reason we're doing this is largely environmental. So the hybrids have a lot of bang for the buck, and if you're not quite ready to go fully electric, we do think hybrids are a great transition vehicle for you to get to the next vehicle. Because if you buy a new car today and then in 5 years you're getting another one, you can be sure that in 5 years the electric vehicle will be absolutely the price competitive vehicle and will have the range that you need to do your daily. Yep, and here's some more data on kind of the plug-in hybrid 5-year fuel payback and maintenance, again showing that these vehicles with their high MPGEs, as we talked about earlier, are just compelling and drive your cost down. You can see the savings there. On this one, it's the fuel savings will really play into the lower cost to own on this vehicle. And again, it depends on how you use a vehicle. The more that you drive, the more I guess cost competitive this will be for you. And so for EVs, you know, you get even lower maintenance costs because, you know, you don't have the oil change and the transmission stuff and the timing belts to deal with. And you can see the MPGEs are even more compelling on these vehicles. And you can see, yeah, the Model 3 standard range has a 141 mile per gallon equivalent. And all of these vehicles have, you know, well over 100. So you're saving money on maintenance, you're saving money on operations costs, and I do go back to how nice they are to drive. So there are some additional information that you should check out as well. FuelEconomy.gov is a really good site to check out and learn more about these. It was a source for much of the information that we have. There's the Alternative Fuels and Advanced Vehicles Data Center that you can also visit. And then the Plug-in Electric Vehicle Handbook for Consumers. So that's by the Department of Energy. So there's a lot of information out there. We've tried to summarize a lot of it here for you to try to make it easy for you as well. But you'll get this in the packet after the. Okay, so we're gonna do I guess a panel discussion. Again, I'm Noel Smith. I am a longtime Tesla Model S owner, and my wife drives the Model 3, and she lets me drive it sometime. And there you go. There's my car and my bike. Yeah, I threw my bike in there because I decided that for bopping around town, I'm going to drive an electric bicycle. Why drive a 5,000-pound vehicle to cart myself around when I can do it on a 50-pound bike? So I do have an electric Trek now, but the vehicle is amazing. I don't drive as much as I used to, but I used to work in Wilmington. I work in Philadelphia now, and I plan to drive my Trek into Philly. So yeah, thanks for that. And my wife drives the S.
My name's Melisa Romano. I'm also a Havertown resident, and this is my current car, the Honda Clarity, and I love this car. I have 2 years experience driving the Chevrolet Volt first. That was my first car I got in 2017. The Volt is a plug-in hybrid. I decided to lease this as I wasn't sure if I was going to like the electric vehicle experience, plus also financially, it was a lot cheaper to lease it. Like they said, there is a tax credit for an electric car. However, if you lease it, that credit goes to the dealership. So when you actually lease a car, they get the money, but you get the discount. So they write off that rebate, the credit that they got off of the price of the car. So I had a pretty easy, manageable monthly payment. I had 0% down. I had a low interest rate, and the dealer got the tax rebate. It worked out for me. And in 2 years, I realized, it was a great car. However, the Volt was a little bit on the smaller side. It actually sat 2 in the back, and it had not room for a third person in the middle. And you see my children there. 2 years ago, they both were in car seats. Now kids are in car seats till they're 10. So I still have them in car seats, and I needed a slightly bigger car. And I was ready to own it. I loved it, and I recommend electric cars to anybody. My kids will tell you they love it, and they play with their little metal matchbox cars and try to plug it in and pretend they're electric too. So last summer, June 2019, we transitioned to the Honda Clarity, and actually the model I have is a 2018. It was left over on the lot from the previous year. It had less than 100 miles on it, and it was actually pretty rare to find. There wasn't another Clarity in this area for 200 miles. A lot of the different models of cars are more on the West Coast where it's more popular. So because I got this Clarity, I did end up getting that full $7,500 tax credit. Plus last year at the time, I got a $1,000 state rebate, which came within a month. And then there's also a $50 PICO rebate that you're eligible for that I got right away. Both of these cars average, they say about 30 to 60 miles on electric. So hybrid, I would use up my electric first, and then when that has been depleted, it automatically transitions to the gas component, which is kind of shocking if I'm not ready for it, because the electric car is so quiet that when it transitions to that gas engine, it is a little bit louder, and you can hear a big difference. Both of these, I get probably about 30 miles in the winter and more like 50 the rest of the year when I'm not using my heat and with the colder weather. I actually have a detached garage. It's hard to see in this picture, on the other side of my house. So my husband's car lives in the garage, and it only comes out in the summertime, and my car lives in the driveway. So I only plug it into the outlet, which is the 120 volt. I have the charger that came with the car, and I plug it right in the outlet, and then that cord runs right under the garage door, and I plug it into my car. Not ideal, but it works great in our case. And in order to install a level 2 charger, I'd have to dig up my entire yard. So I think at this point, it's going to stay like this for a little while. My work is currently just 10 miles from my house, so I can get to and from work on one single charge, which is very convenient. If I take the blue route, I use those miles as is, but if I take the back roads, because of that regenerative braking, I would use half as many miles, and my mileage would last a lot longer. We do make trips to the shore in the summer, typically, maybe not this summer. But as a hybrid, I always have that gas backup, which I feel like I need, and that works well for us. So far I've been happy with really both cars, but obviously we love our Honda Clarity now. And now that you see in the sign, we also installed solar panels this past November. I can now too say I'm driving on sunshine. I like that phrase. Thank you, Noel. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. This is Peter Puglionesi, and the first thing I bought was a electric motorcycle, a Zero S, and so I have a very constrained driveway and garage. We could never get I guess maybe a horse and carriage once went in the garage. So that's one of the reasons why I first got the electric motorcycle, because it was the only thing I could actually pull into the garage. And so this has got about 160-mile range in the city, plug into a regular wall outlet, and overnight it's a full charge. It's a great machine, instant torque, very quiet. Harley riders would not want it. Doesn't make any noise. So that's obviously one option if you're a motorcycle is an option for you. I do have an e-bike, by the way, also, which is great for someone now 62 years old. Knees are not as great as they used to be, and particularly, where you have to on a regular bike stand on it. My knees complain, and the e-bike is a great change for that. So about 3 years ago, we got a used Chevy Volt with a V. So that was, as Melissa was talking about, that we plugged with a very long extension car to an outlet inside the garage. That's where I said, if you're going to do this, if you're going to go on 110 power, one of the things that I had to think about was, how much power do you let it take out of the outlet? It's a 15 amp circuit, so you don't want to take too much. And if you do have to run a long extension cord, you really have to think, oh, I've got to buy like a 12 gauge or a 10 gauge, really heavy duty extension cord if you're going to do that, as opposed to if you could pull right into a location where you could plug it directly into the outlet. You don't have to worry about that. So now, about a year ago, we bought the Chevy Bolt. Before that vehicle went from the $7,500 rebate down to what it is now, which is $3,750 for the federal tax credit, I should say. And at the time, we got $1,750 from Pennsylvania and $50 from PICO as a rebate. So one of the reasons why I switched after 2 years, so the Volt was a transitional vehicle. I was worried about range. I was worried about my wife having range anxiety. But after 2 years of me using the Volt, I don't so much commute. I have a home office, but I did a lot of business travel, and I would, drive to Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, Connecticut, and I would rue the moment that I ran out of juice. And the Volt, the one bad thing about the Volt is that on gasoline, it really wasn't that efficient. I think the fuel economy was about 37 miles per gallon. So we were ready to move to all electric. Love it. It's a great vehicle. So we've got the 240 odd mile range, more or less depending on the weather. Initially we actually did plug it into the garage. Then we got a level 2 charger. So what we had to do was we had to get an electrician to look at the situation. We didn't have we didn't have a 230 volt outlet. We did have adequate power in the garage, so we just had to have an electrician run find the right circuit and run power to a new outlet that he installed just outside the garage. Undercover is ideal for us. And the charger that we got, we actually got an extra long cable from the charger box, which was undercover out to the vehicle, which is sitting in the driveway probably 20, 25 feet away. So all worked out great. We've transitioned, so we use the apps that Noel was talking about, the PlugShare app. I've actually gone on vacation. We went on vacation to Maine. I've gone on business trips again to Connecticut and Ohio and so forth. And so the difference is planning, right? And knowing where you're going to stop. And once you accepted that, you can use the PlugShare app on your phone like you use the map function on your phone, then you're really good to go. So anyway, that was my transition experience. We love the electric vehicle, and I would highly recommend it unless you really have some of those obstacles that we were talking about. So I'm going to turn it over to Doug White. Doug, take it away.
Hey everyone, thanks Noel and Peter for inviting me to share my EV experience, our EV experience actually, because I own that a 3-year-old Leaf and my wife has a Hyundai Kona, which 2019, and I gotta say we love them both. My adventure started about 4 years ago when I bought that battery electric vehicle, the 2013 Leaf. But before I got that, I had to ask myself a lot of questions. I said, what was most important to me? I'd already decided I didn't want to burn fossil fuel in my car, so that narrowed it down to a battery electric vehicle and not a hybrid that had an engine too. But other factors I considered was economy. Did I want a new one? Did I want financing or leasing? Did I want a used one? What would my average trip be? What about charging? How much would the charging add to my electric bill? And what's a frunk anyway? So for me, I wanted economy, and 80 miles or so of range between charges was fine because I planned on charging at home. So a used vehicle was fine, and a certified pre-owned or a CPO from a dealer would give me peace of mind. And I'd seen the Leafs around for years, so I was pretty confident that from my research that they'd worked out all the bugs, even though it kind of looks like a bug. But I test drove a used Leaf at the Nissan dealer, and I really liked it. The demo there was sold, but a week later they called and said they'd found what I'd requested, a CPO 3-year-old Leaf, had 16,000 miles, had all leather, a built-in navigation system, heated seats, and a heated steering wheel, and it was in perfect condition. So I walked out of the dealer and for $13,000, I got what I considered was a practically brand new car. And that Leaf provides an average of about 75 miles of range, which is fine for me. It tops off about 90 miles, but things like the running heating or the air conditioning or high-speed highway driving can cut that, like Peter said, about 20% or more. But it does have that regenerative braking, and that can add charge back to the batteries. So it's kind of fun learning to get the best range by adjusting my driving habits. So I installed my own level 2 home charger. I did install that juice box myself. It cost me about $800, and it only takes a couple hours to charge that overnight. I can charge it if it's almost empty, and I also get a multitude of operations from my Nissan app. I can start it remotely. I can turn the heater on remotely. It can even show me what the what the carbon offset is. So it's kind of cool. It's quiet, it's quick, fun to drive, and I'd say it costs less than half what an efficient gas car costs with zero maintenance. Matter of fact, our monthly budget electric bill increased only about $10 from that home charging, $10 a month. So I don't need to go to the gas station anymore. And that juice box has worked flawlessly for the last 4 years. So when my wife's Volvo hit 80,000 miles, she'd been driving my Leaf around and she wanted an EV too. So we drove every EV that we could find And after about a month of weighing all the pros and cons, we found that 2019 Hyundai Kona. It's a white 4-door hatchback. It gets an average, believe it or not, of about 300 miles of range, and it uses the exact same charger that the Leaf uses. So I got to tell you that Kona is fun to drive. We named it Mona the Kona, and in sport mode, it's almost too fast. So we're an all electric family now. We got the 2 battery electric vehicles and 2 e-bikes, and our next goal actually is to go solar and make our own electric fuel. But for now, we purchase 100% wind energy. So even though we leased, Nissan Leasing did take that $7,500, the $7,500 tax credit, and we got $1,750 from the state and a few other $50 checks from Pico and Hyundai. And now there are additional rebates available as well, depending on where you live. So the Leaf was a learning experience, and I got no regrets. The Kona took a lot more research because there were more options and a bigger budget, but my wife wanted a long-range EV to minimize charging if we went long distances, and the few times that we needed to charge kind of on the road, we were prepared. We use one of the many apps that make it that an enjoyable experience. So both the Kona and the Leaf are equipped with the DC quick charge ports, so we can fully charge from about 20 to 80% in about an hour. So all in all, we're convinced the EVs are the way to go for us, as polluting fossil fuel driven vehicles become less attractive for the masses too, I'd say. And that's about it for me. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, and thanks for letting me share my experiences with you.
Thank you, Doug. I'm going to unmute all the attendees so you could ask questions at will. We don't have that many. Some of you are self-muted. Doug, I want to thank you for mentioning the DC fast charge option. I forgot to mention that. So for a Tesla, you don't have to think, because all Teslas are equipped for fast charging. But for most other vehicles like the Chevy Bolt, it was an option. And that's unless you're never going to go on a long trip with it, that's an essential option. So that's one thing I think you should think about, which is, hey, let's make this vehicle as flexible as possible. Let's have the DC fast charge option. I would certainly recommend it, unless you really know that, hey, this is just a commuting vehicle. The Nissan Leaf, great example. We actually advised Haverford Township to buy a used Leaf for parking enforcement, which they did, and they got it for like $11,000. Great for that application where you don't lead a lot of miles. That yours was the first gen. Now the Leaf has caught up to everyone else, and they have an available model with 200 plus mile range like everyone else. So that's sort of the almost the floor now for electric vehicles. And I think, over the next several years, you're going to see that floor begin to rise up to and above 300 mile range. So audience questions. So have you got electric cars, thinking about electric cars? Anything that we can answer for you, or have we answered everything that you could ever imagine? All right, it looks like we have no questions. So panelists, I want to thank you for doing an excellent job sharing your experiences. Doug, for your information, you should think about one of our next webinars. This is just some references of other things you can do. haveswitch@gmail.com. If you still need advice, email us, and someone will kind of hold your hand through the process of electric vehicle. That email address is also good for helping you buy renewable, and then for solar home. In Delaware County, we have Solarized Delco, and there's a Solarized Southeastern Pennsylvania and a Solarized Philly. If you're looking at everything climate, look at the Berkeley climate calculator, Cool Climate. It's an excellent thing to kind of test your options for reducing your carbon footprint. I think we've answered all your questions. One of the things that we have coming up is a solar home webinar. So Doug, I recommend this for you if you want to look at our look for the next opportunity to attend that, and that will help your transition to going solar on your home. Okay, thank you all very much for presenting today. Noel Smith, Melisa Romano, Doug White, and myself, Peter Puglionesi. Thank you for attending the webinar and have a great evening.